So now that we've gone ahead and shot our pictures for the DIY studio, let's go ahead and take a look at doing some editing. So it's been a little while since we've done some Snapseed. Let's go ahead and launch Snapseed. And what we're going to do is we're going to open up a photo. So if you didn't already, just go ahead and say open. And we're going to select one of our pictures from our shoot. So I'm just going to start off with this image here. Now, a couple of things are going on here. I actually did a screenshot because I didn't shoot very many pictures during that time. So I'm going to go ahead and start off with a crop. Now, because this is something you might want to do, if let's say there's like a little area of your background that's cropping, that's showing through, and you want to get rid of that. So we might want to do some cropping. And when we do the crop, we should be able to just, drag these little corners in and down. It's always the top is always hard to grab onto. There we go. And then once it's smaller, it's easier to kind of manage. All right, so then there's our crop. Maybe I'll get rid of that last little bit up here at the top. Perfect. And then once you like that, just hit the X. Right, so there's my photo. And then we're going to be converting it to black and white. So black and white's down here inside of Tools. So we're going to go black and white. And there's several different versions of black and white. If you want to scroll through there and pick one that you like, I'm going to use the one called Film. And when we do that, what I'm going to do is, just go through each of the sliders. So it starts off with brightness. And so I'm going to go ahead and brighten it up a little bit because I want that highlight side to be a little bit better. I also want my background to start to go into, closer to a white. And then the next one, you can also just scroll up. So the next one's contrast. And so I'm going to, again, bring up that contrast a little bit. If we're thinking about Richard Avedon and Irving Penn, they used pretty high contrast black and white. So we'll go ahead and increase that contrast a little bit. And then the next one is grain. So it's just dragged up. You can always access it from here too. So both of them are shot with really large format cameras. So they didn't have a lot of grain. So I want some grain, but I don't want a lot. So I'm just gonna bring this down and you can kind of play with it. I'm going to probably go around 10-ish or something. So it just has a little bit of that texture, but, to where it's still a pretty clean photo. So let's just go maybe like 15. Okay. So that's looking pretty good. I think for, if we're looking at like a Richard Avedon style, I'm going to go ahead and say check mark. So then now there are still some wrinkles and some folds back here. Now, if I was doing more of like an Irving Penn and I had like sweeping backgrounds or things, that might be okay. But if I'm going for like a Richard Avedon style, I want to get rid of some of that. So I'm going to go into Tools and I'm going to use our brush. And then I'm going to do the EV, which is exposure value, and I'm going to increase it to 1. And then what I'm going to do is just start to paint wherever I see those wrinkles, right? So I'm just going to increase the brightness in the background. Now, it might not completely eliminate it, but that's okay. I just want to get in there and take as much of it out as I can. And I'm just going to do kind of a rough, loose painting, and then I'll come back in and get a little bit tighter. Now, I did make a mistake over here by the hand, so I can always go to Erase. And let's just zoom in and move this over. So I didn't want to get this part of the hand, so I can come back in and bring that back to full. And then since I'm already zoomed in, I'm going to bring that back up to 1, and I'll start to, maybe paint away some of these little areas just so that they're a little bit brighter. And then again, to move, use 2 fingers. So I can come in here and get some of these little areas. If it leaks a little bit over that shoulder, I think that's going to be okay. And again, if I make a mistake, I can always come back to Erase. Okay. All right, so I think that's looking pretty good. Now I still have a little bit up here, and even though I painted over it, oops, that's the minus. Even though I painted over it, it's still not going away, right? So I could do a couple of things. I could try playing with like burn and dodge and other things, but we're going to learn another tool called healing. So I'm going to hit check mark. That way that part's been taken care of. And then I'm going to go Tools, and there's one right here. It looks like a couple of Band-Aids. It's called Healing. So we're going to click there. What Healing does is I can kind of paint here, and it'll choose a new area to borrow some pixels from. So I'm just going to paint across each of those, and notice it's completely gotten rid of each of those. It's found a new area to borrow some white from to cover that part up. So now I've got a nice clean white background for my Richard Avedon style. Now the healing brushes can also be used for other things as well. So I'm gonna go ahead and hit check mark. Now, in this case, I think that having some of these wrinkles and texture and things are really going to help, because it's, we're going for the Richard Avedon style. I think that's going to be good. But if I did have like a blemish or a mark or something like that, I could go in with that healing brush. And again, we'd want to zoom all the way in, and I could go ahead and take those out. So it might be like, okay, there's a little dot there. That's not necessarily a freckle. So I might want to go in and say, oh, I want to do healing. And let's zoom all the way in there. And then what I'm going to do is just touch that little spot there, and then it goes away, right? And, we don't want to do this with everything, but if there's things that are there that maybe aren't, it's a pimple. It's there for one day, maybe we want to touch those things up just a little bit, just to clean up. We're not trying to redo everything. We're not trying to change the person's face and shape, but, something like a pimple, it's going to come and go. So we can go ahead and get rid of those. Like this is like a little bright highlight. I might want to bring that down just a little bit by putting some skin from over here. That'll kind of clean that part up a little bit so it's not quite so hot. All right, so that's kind of what our healing tool is going to do. We'll just say check to that. Great. Now, once we have the picture the way that we want it, we're going to want to go ahead and get it out of the Snapseed. So we're going to click on export. Now, if I just do export, this is going to create a copy with permanent changes. So it's just going to apply it. So that's great. If you think you're going to want to re-edit it, then you might want to do this save function. So you can come back and do it again. But for now, I'm just going to go ahead and export. So that sent it to my camera roll so that I can then upload it to our Canvas website. So go ahead and kind of follow that process through. Do it to at least 5 of your images. Maybe try it from a variety of places. So let's just say, okay, I'm going to open up a new one, and let's take a look here. I also shot over in this other setup over here. So let's say I wanted to work on that photo. So it's slightly different. It's already kind of blowing out in these areas. So again, I don't need to crop it. I can just go tools, and I can do my black and white again. I'm going to stick with that same one. Again, brightness. So this one might need a slightly different adjustment for brightness. That's got, that highlight is already blown out, right? So we can kind of just go in there. We can go to contrast. Do I want to bring down the contrast or increase that contrast further? And then again, that grain I think is way too strong for, at least for the Richard Avedon style. There we go. So, that should work pretty well. And again, if I wanted to go in and do some other retouching, I could go in, if I wanted to try to do something like, get rid of all the wrinkles, I could go in and do healing, and just lightly, get rid of a few of these things. It's going to look weird, right? Let's go back a step. Make myself 5 years younger. So you can always go back. I need to try to get in there closer so I can take a smaller sample size. So if you want to go through there and do some things like that, by all means, go ahead and experiment. But, we don't want it to look fake, right? We want it to be authentic to the person, but that's how we do some retouching. So get in there, pick at least 5 from your shoots, and, convert them either to the Richard Avedon or Irving Penn style of photography.